At Home in North Branch by Arleta Richardson. Chapter 2. Sarah Jane Returns.
I might have known I'd find you daydreaming under a tree with your best dress on.
I jumped up and whirled around.
Sarah Jane, where did you come from? You weren't supposed to be here until the end of June.
And miss your birthday? Actually, I worked pretty hard to get us ready to leave a week early.
She hugged me tightly, then stood back and surveyed me fondly.
I haven't seen you for 6 whole months. It looks as though you might be managing without me.
I do my best,
I replied.
But it's going to be even better now that you're here. Where's Thomas?
I left him helping Len with the chores. They'll go on together, and we can ride home in our buggy. It will give us time for a nice long visit. Are you ready to go?
Oh, yes. Let me run in and get Emily.
Emily? You mean as in doll Emily that we played with 100 years ago?
Certainly,
I replied.
I never go any place without her.
Seeing the dumbfounded look on Sarah Jane's face, I laughed.
I'm taking her for Violet to play with. It took me a long time to decide to give her up, but Ma promised she wouldn't let Violet destroy her.
I suppose you still have Charlotte stashed away somewhere too?
Of course. What makes you think I'd do away with my family just because I got married?
Sarah Jane shook her head. Sorry, I can't imagine what made me think you'd discard a rag filled with popcorn that you found in a ditch 16 years ago.
No one understands, I said. Charlotte has more personality than some people I know. You don't discard someone just because of her humble beginning.
I rummaged around in my trunk and came up with Emily. Her gray shoe-button eyes were as bright as the day Ma made her for me many Christmases ago.
We had a good childhood, didn't we? Things were so uncomplicated then.
Mabel, Sarah Jane interrupted, are you talking about the same childhood you and I shared? We invented complicated, remember?
I guess we were pretty awful, I laughed. And to think that Ma has to go through all of that again with Violet.
I opened the door with Sarah Jane to go out, but she paused on the threshold.
Do your cows always make themselves at home on your front porch?
Only this one, I grumbled. Len was sure the gate would hold this time. Come on, animal, get out of here.
I gave the cow a slap on the rump and escorted her to the field again, then joined Sarah Jane in the buggy.
I really should take a switch to her, I said. That might teach her to stay where she belongs.
You don't have the heart for it, Sarah Jane grinned. You're the one who can't kill a chicken for Sunday dinner, remember?
That's true, even after all my years on the farm.
That's all right, Sarah Jane answered me. I like you the way you are.
As we started down the road toward our old homes, a lot of memories came flooding back.
Remember the first trip we made up here 3 years ago? I asked. Who could dream that so much could happen in that short time? I certainly didn't think I'd be teaching in this school for 3 years.
Sarah Jane glanced at me.
I always thought you were a homemaker at heart. Are you going to spend the rest of your life in a schoolroom?
Probably not, I laughed. Don't you know that God's timing is always perfect? I don't pretend to understand it, but I trust it. How about you? Have you thought about going back to Edenville in the fall?
I've thought about it, but I'd have to get a replacement after Christmas if I went back.
Whatever for? Sarah Jane, are you going to have a baby?
It's due in January, she replied happily. Consider the news your birthday present. Aside from Thomas, you're the only one who knows.
Oh, Sarah Jane, that's wonderful. We have a whole summer ahead to sew for it. We can sit by the river and...
Not so fast. I'd rather have you name my child than sew for it. Aren't you the one who embroidered Miss Gibson's tea towel to your apron and sewed the seams of your dress on the right side? Do you think I want my child to look like a ragamuffin?
I made the dress I have on, I said primly, and it looks pretty nice. Len said so.
Sarah Jane looked me over critically.
Well, there has been an improvement, she admitted. But isn't that a basting thread on the collar?
I quickly pulled my collar out to try to look at it, and Sarah Jane burst out laughing.
I was just teasing, Mabel. It looks beautiful. Of course I want you to help me make baby clothes. If we hadn't moved here, Thomas would have had to send for you.
A sudden bump in the road brought us back to the present.
Whew! I don't remember that one,
I said. I looked around at the field and woods surrounding us.
Sarah Jane, where are we? Did you bear to the left instead of right, back at the fork?
I didn't bear either way, she replied. I was too busy talking to even see the fork. How far back was it?
I have no idea. I wasn't paying attention to the road either. We'll have to turn around.
I can't back this horse up, let alone turn him around, Sarah Jane protested. This road will go somewhere, won't it?
I wouldn't dignify it by calling it a road, I replied. Let's get out and see if we can turn him around by the bridle.
We jumped out of the buggy and together we tugged at the horse's head. He was willing to turn, but the buggy had a different idea. Halfway around, the right wheel caught sharply on a rock and refused to budge.
Do you have the feeling that we've passed this way before? Sarah Jane said. Why does everything we do together turn into a disaster without any help from us?
She walked over to the buggy and delivered a swift kick to the offending wheel. It promptly dropped off and rolled into the grass.
I think that had a little help from you, I observed. What do we do now?
Sarah Jane flopped down in the grass and fanned herself with her hat.
We'll just have to wait until Thomas and Len come by and let them take care of it.
If they have any sense, they won't come by,
I pointed out.
We're on the wrong road, remember?
Oh, right. Then we'll have to get the buggy back to the fork somehow so they'll see us.
Good. Do you want to carry the wheel or hold up the right side of the buggy?
Don't be cross, Mabel. I'll admit this is an inconvenience, but we've been in tougher spots and come out all right. Besides, I haven't heard any solutions from you.
I'm sorry.
I sank down in the grass beside her.
It's not your fault any more than mine. We'll think of something.
We sat in silence for a moment.
I haven't ridden a horse without a saddle since I've been in long skirts, but I guess I could ride back and get them,
I said finally.
And leave me in this strange field by myself? Not on your life, Sarah Jane declared. I'll ride back with you.
You shouldn't be riding a horse, should you? I asked. Do you think that would be a good idea?
Maybe not, she agreed. So we'll lead the horse and walk back. It can't be too far.
Trudging back over the dusty road with the horse between us, the humor of our ridiculous situation struck us, and we laughed until tears rolled down our cheeks.
Do you remember a tree on that corner that we can sit under to wait?
I asked when I could speak again.
I don't even remember the corner,
Sarah Jane giggled.
How could we have done something so foolish?
We? This is your horse, and you had the reins.
You could have been watching the road, you know, she replied.
I laughed again.
It's been we all our lives, hasn't it? Why should today be any different? But, Sarah Jane, I continued, what will we tell Thomas and Len?
I doubt that a lengthy explanation will be necessary, she commented. When they see the two of us and the horse on the corner with no buggy in sight, they're bound to suspect that all is not well.
When we reached the fork in the road, there was indeed a tree. We released the horse and stretched out gratefully in the shade.
Aside from the fact that there's nothing to eat or drink, this isn't a bad place to spend a birthday, I said.
A sudden thought struck me, and I sat up.
What if they've already gone by here and they get clear home and find out we're not there?
Sarah Jane groaned and turned over on her face.
We'd never hear the end of this. Can't you just see the picture? Len and Thomas arrive and both sets of parents converge on the buggy and say, "Where are the girls?" And Thomas says, "Aren't they here? They left a long time before we did." And Len says, "We didn't pass them on the road." And our mothers look at each other and say, "I thought we were past this stage in life." And then Thomas will say, "I suppose we better go back and look for them."
The next thing we knew, we were being awakened by voices above our heads.
Should we leave them here and pick them up on our way back tonight? We could, or we could pin a note on the tree telling them that dinner is ready whenever they get there. I think they should be able to walk the rest of the way before dark, don't you?
We stood up and Sarah Jane said indignantly,
"How do you know we weren't thrown from the buggy and were lying here unconscious?" Well, for one thing, the horse is standing here and the buggy isn't. I can't imagine that it went on alone, Thomas replied.
Very observant,
she snorted, brushing off her dress.
I don't want to make matters worse, Len said, but where is the buggy?
I pointed to the left fork of the road.
And there was a real good reason that it went that way and left you here?
Len, you are both going to be in big trouble if you don't go get the buggy and take us home. We're starving and wasting a good part of a day while you stand here making smart remarks.
We decided to leave the buggy where it was until the next day since we had nothing with us to fix the wheel.
This is going to be a long summer,
Thomas commented once we were seated in Len's buggy and on the road again.
You haven't seen anything yet,
I promised.
There's no limit to what we can accomplish when we set our minds to it.
That's not the first buggy you've lost, if my mind serves me,
Pa said when the story was told at home.
Of course you were young and foolish then.
And now I'm old and foolish,
I sighed.
That's all right. You wouldn't know I was your daughter if I changed too much.
That's something I'll always know,
Pa said, hugging me tightly.
We're just glad you got here before the guests left.
I looked around the big yard that had been the scene of so many celebrations, including my wedding.
Isn't it too bad that everyone isn't blessed with the wonderful family and friends we have?
I said to Ma as we carried dishes to the kitchen.
I often wonder why the Lord has been so good to us. He promised that he would honor those who honor him,
Ma reminded me.
We have tried to do that. A lot of people do, Ma, and their lives aren't always happy. Sometimes it doesn't seem like a fair distribution of blessings.
We were never promised fair.
We were promised strength for each day and grace sufficient for the trial. I think it's safe to say that you'll need to rely on that before you die.
Ma could not know how soon that would be, but I had reason to remember her words before the summer was over. End of chapter 2.